All right, welcome everybody to Missing Persons Uncovered, to see episode 6. I'm Caroline Humer, a global online child protection expert, and unfortunately Karen Shalev could not join us this week, but we will. In this podcast series, we seek to understand the complexities of a global issue. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people go missing worldwide. In every episode, we talk to professionals to share insights into how we can all be more aware and take actions to protect vulnerable people in our communities and families from going missing. This week, we have the pleasure of being joined by Maryana and Damon, joining us from Kenya and from Uganda. Although Maryana is currently in the United States doing a 10-month visiting professorship, so that is amazing, and we'll introduce the two of them shortly. But beforehand, just a quick housekeeping notes. There will be a new episode every 2 weeks on a different topic with different professionals, from social workers, police, and researchers, as well as academics and others. If you're interested in missing persons and like the podcast, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, leave a comment, and you can also find us under Missing Persons Uncovered on either through our website or on YouTube. Karen and I do not provide assistance in specific missing person cases, so please contact the local NGO or your police. Feel free to comment or ask questions throughout the live discussion. Please avoid mentioning specific cases or names, and let's keep it also professional. We would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please say hello and where you are from. This week, I am back in Vienna, Austria, and as I already mentioned, our two guests are in other places. As part of season 4 and being live, we thought we start each episode with quotes from our guests, and that what has a special meaning to them. So maybe Damon, I'll start with you. If you can sort of explain to me what your sort of mantra is on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you very much, Caroline, and good evening, everyone from Uganda. Hi, Maryana.
Hello.
And hi, everyone who's joined in. So what keeps me going, the quote that I will share today is from Professor John Mbiti, who talks about Ubuntu-ness, which means oneness. And he quotes and he says that I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. His expression is around the fact that we can never live in isolation from each other. We need each other. We need to walk with each other. We need to be there for each other. We need to stand for each other. And his push for Ubuntu-ness means that we can be able to attack or tackle anything as long as we are together and we're working together. So Ubuntu-ness is a key factor that drives many of us as Africans, that we need to be together. So even if I am from Uganda and Maryana is from Kenya, I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am.
That just is amazing quote. Definitely something I will keep in mind, because when we talk about missing and searching for missing people, missing children, it is something that you cannot do by yourself, and it is something that we always have to be collective. Maryana, I also would love to know what keeps you going every day, the work that you do in Kenya.
Okay. For me, a lot of people in our sector, especially when it comes to things that touch to probably a lot of distress, they end up probably they have had a survivor experience, and maybe something they're related to a case. And for me, what drives me is giving them hope. I do not, out of lack of a better word, I do not share fear. I always share hope, because I know at the end of the day, there's something in our work. There's been resolution of cold cases that are over 40 years. So what I keep giving people is hope, that let us hold on to this, and whatever the outcome, positive or negative, we will have justice and some form of a start of closure. Closure is never complete, but I am an ambassador of hope. I carry hope everywhere I go. Yeah.
And I can absolutely vouch for that, as when I was in Kenya, that is definitely something I felt when working with you and your team and the community in Kenya on some of these issues, that it was very hopeful in always managing to find the best in people as well as the best in the outcome. So I appreciate those two quotes, are very timely and very relevant for today's discussion. I would love to maybe to start with maybe what we usually start with is a little bit about your background, your organization, and what you're doing. And as this is our first podcast focusing on Africa, I would also maybe add to it, this sort of maybe give me a little bit of a summary of what you think of the perception of how you see missing in Africa, and specifically in your own country. And maybe this time I'll start with you, Maryana, and then Damon, you can jump in.
Okay. I have worked in different sectors across the years. My background is in communication. I studied communication and public relations. But in the course of my career, I've worked in different development contexts that have enabled me to see the need of building people's capacities in each of the sectors that I've worked in. Most notably, I have been in Kenya. I have been in the early years of my career in the banking sector. After that, I went into the education sector, where I worked for a wonderful institution that supports children from needy backgrounds to give them a secondary school education. And from there, I was in charge of programming and communications. And the school is called Starehe Boys Center. From there, I realized that I enjoy working in the children's sector, and this is something I want to go on working through. Also, when my time at Starehe Boys Center ended, I knew I was ready to be out and do something by myself in relation to just child well-being. And so I started out a program that dealt with safety on child training. The program was called Simba Safe Kenya. And because the program was training on what to do, different aspects of safety, what to do when crossing a road, fire safety, safety in the home, what to do when you get lost or when a child goes missing, then we started realizing, then people were getting back to us and saying, okay, a child is missing, what do I need to do? And then that's when I looked at what was available as resources that I could direct them to. And unfortunately, at that point, I found we did not have adequate network of resources, or even a national repository of missing children or missing persons that we could make a reference to. So that's where my journey for Missing Child Kenya started. We started with a few cases in terms of putting them together. And when we're putting the cases together is when we realized there's so much more to go. So that is July 2016 is when I started Missing Child Kenya. It is a nonprofit community-led initiative. We use technology and crowdsourcing. And by this, I mean we are largely on social media, depending on the community, for feedback on missing children sightings and putting out alerts. So currently we run the only toll-free helpline in Kenya, which is an 0800 number, 0800 223 It's dedicated to responding to the emergency needs of missing, lost and found displaced children. So part of my work has grown into, when I started, I looked around Africa for my peers, organizations that I could relate to in terms of our narrative as Africa, because issues of missing children or missing persons in Africa are really not focused on so much the way they are focused on in developed countries. Maybe we would focus so much on the search and announcement, but the follow-up, the aftercare, the case recording, and any other forensic information collection is not as developed as it is in other countries. And so I found a few organizations, very few, that I said maybe I can look at what they're doing. And this ended up growing what we do in terms of trying to build an African community of practice, because what we want to do is to look at what are the unique things that maybe we will discuss in this episode that make us who we are as Africans, that maybe contribute to what our issues around missing are. So I consider myself Kenya's first champion for missing children's right, and rightfully so, because I received an award declaring me one of the top 40 under 40 women in Kenya, and in my work in missing children. And I continue to work for missing children's rights to expand our scope. And because of this, Damon and I have put together what is called the Africa Missing Children Network, where we are able to see what other countries are coming up and what steps can they take to get to where they need to faster than some of us where we started from. So a lot of things, how we work around is we are learning and moving at the same time. So it's really a very fast-paced environment that I should be able to talk about more as we go on. So in a nutshell, that is Missing Child Kenya, a little bit about me and where we are going to and what makes us tick. Thank you, Caroline.
No, thank you. And I think that is amazing, because it has grown since you and I have worked together in 2017 and 18.
Yes.
And 19 as well, I think. And so I think it's amazing to see that it has grown across Africa, and it's consistently grown. So we'll definitely go into this a little more. But Damon, I would love to hear also from you and your organization, and how you sort of look at missing in Uganda.
Thank you very much, Caroline. I feel like it's hard for me to talk after Maryana. I should have gone before Maryana, because her CV is so rich. I don't know how I'll match that CV. But yes, I put on very many hats, Caroline, and Maryana can attest to that. I
Yes.
am a child rights activist, and my passion has been always around creating an enabling environment for children to thrive in who God has created them to be. And we all know that Africa in general, not leaving out my country, Uganda, has quite a number of issues around ensuring that children can be children and can thrive. So my engagement has been quite across. Funny enough, I started my work in the HIV sector, HIV and AIDS sector, in terms of promoting prevention of the spread of HIV/AIDS. Uganda being one of the worst in Africa at the time when I started work. And I think we've since improved in at least the other countries that, and I'm not boasting about it, but there are other countries that are still lacking. But then later on moved into youth engagement. But when I tried to go into the youth engagement to influence the youth to be the change this world needs, I realized that going to talk to the youth was at a late stage. So by the time you're going to deal with the youth, the damage, the trauma, the everything has already been done. And going back, if you remember the early childhood development and the development of a child, the first crucial stages of the development of the child are when they are from 0 to 5 years. Then also when they're about 11 to 13 years, that is when you instill into them and push them to be who they ought to be. So that definitely pushed me into engaging with children. I have worked with an organization called Dwelling Places, where we worked around children who are living and working on the streets. Those have been abandoned, those who have run away from home, those who have also been trafficked. And that introduced me into the field of trafficking for children who are forced begging, but later on also engaging in trafficking, cross-border trafficking. That ended up making me meet Maryana and a couple of other friends, as trafficking is a cross-border issue, and expounding on our knowledge in terms of Africa. I currently lead a network of child rights organizations in Uganda called Uganda Child Rights NGO Network. We are close to 185 organizations, child rights organizations, from international to national and to community-based organizations that are working on promotion and protection of children's rights. So I cut across in terms of that work. Then when it comes to the regional level, I have been a part of the establishment of the Eastern Africa Child Rights Network, which again brings together the child rights networks like mine from the other African countries together to still advocate and promote the protection of the rights of the children. And we advocate for the issues at the Eastern Africa level. And also at the African Union level, I chair the board of the CSO Forum on the African Committee on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, where we are definitely pushing bringing the voice of the children from the grassroots to the international space. I've also been a part of quite a number of spaces around child protection. I'm also safeguarding specialist in Uganda, and also do consultancy in the field of child rights and protection. The engagement around missing children for me is a passion from the angle of those who are trafficked, those who are stolen from their homes, those who are coerced from their homes, and then those who are also sold off from their homes and are not with their families. My passion, my real passion, is to see that children stay in families, not in orphanages, not in any other place, but they are with a family, because the family is their identity. So my desire is to see that we have strong families in our country, Uganda. We have strong communities. Just like I said, I am because we are, and since we are, therefore I am. Our strength is within the communities, and by that we have been able to achieve so much, even with our regional collaboration. Because we have children who are missing from Uganda that end up in Nairobi, and we've been able to work with organizations such as even Maryana's organization and quite a number of other organizations to identify children and safely return these children to their families and reunite them with their families, which for me is the greatest payment I receive at the end of the month, seeing a smile on a child reunited with their family.
Absolutely. I think anybody that has done this work can attest to that, that smile is what keeps us going, no matter how hard it is on a day-to-day. That smile when you're reuniting a parent with a child is just unbelievable. And I will say this, Damon, your resume is as much as impressive as Maryana, so don't you worry in all of that.
You're just being kind. You're just being kind to me, aren't you?
And just so you know, last week, 2 weeks ago, in the last episode, we actually had Altin from Albania talk a little bit about the link between human rights and child rights and missing. So that was a really interesting conversation with him, because he's also been, like you, in this field of child rights for the past 30 years, and has really made a difference in Albania in building what he has done. And like Maryana has also then set up the missing children element and the hotline and everything else. But there's a lot that we can talk about. What I would love to sort of maybe also understand, because coming from the developing world or developed world, we sort of look at missing a little differently, right? We look at it not as a social issue, but more as a police issue. We look at data, but I think from working with Maryana and with others in Africa, it sort of feels there's a different way you look and treat the issue of missing in Africa. But maybe also something, I don't know what kind of statistics or data that you have that maybe gives the listeners and the people to understand how big it is. We know we don't have global numbers. Majority countries don't actually have numbers. So what do you see? I know there's links to trafficking, but what kind of things do you see that tells you this is an issue that needs attention?
Okay. I think I'll start. When we started, like I said, we could not give an accurate report because we were picking up the numbers as we go. And this was linked to a lot of things that look at the African context as a whole. And by looking at the African context as a whole, I would say there were gaps in a few things that would enable us not to tell our missing story on numbers adequately. And number one was our policy and legislature was lacking. And so we were looking at what are some of the recommendations and what are some of the existing laws that we can use in the national or regional approaches to child protection in Africa. Within East Africa, I'm glad to say that we have the East African community where we have also the East African laws that can help countries that collaborate like Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, among others. The other thing was technology was also something that is not something that a lot of us within the African context were using in terms of the different communication methods to either reach out or broadcast or have incoming information. Psychosocial support, I would say Africans, we tend to shy quite a lot away from psychosocial, addressing psychosocial needs. I would say it's not considered African or proper to go to see a psychiatrist or a psychologist to speak to someone, a counselor. So you'd find in small examples, like some of the cases we handle, a parent would say, we are okay, we don't need counseling. And there's been a psychosocial element, even though their children are back with them or a child has been found. And so then just the taboo around talking about people who have been missing. A lot of people will say, I have an aunt who left 10, 50 years ago. We've never heard from her. No one ever documented or reported. So we don't know what missing is. And so we have not reported some cases as missing. And then just community awareness and participation. These are things that are increasing with time as we go on, but also that was some of the lacking factors behind there that we would say some of the communities didn't know exactly what missing is or some of the categories of missing are and how to be able to report a case. Data, like I said, our numbers right now, I would say Missing Child Kenya, we have handled cases. I'm just trying to find our numbers. I don't have them top of my head, but we have handled over 1,551 children in our case files. That is as of 2024, end of 2024. So out of these 1,055 children have been found and reunited with their families.
Yep.
153 children have been committed to government homes for safe care and custody. We have unfortunately documented 28 as deceased, and we are still searching for another 315. So that makes it the total of 1551. This is a number that barely scratches the surface, I would say, because when we were trying to do our initial report, Kenya is subdivided into counties. We would find that a certain county does not have missing children at all. It doesn't mean that children are not missing there. There's a lot of factors that come into play. Some of these counties are marginalized resource-wise, culture-wise, and so some of them talking about missing children is different. So for me, I would list 4 things that have come up in terms of our work in Africa, in Kenya and Africa in relation to missing children. Number one, African culture. Some of the reasons some children could go missing on the other side, which is also related to human trafficking, where Damon also comes in strongly, is because of some of the things that we consider culturally. So when we look at the fact that in some communities, even with the present times, it is still not considered good when a woman does not have children. childlessness is frowned upon. So somebody might steal a child. A second thing, a cultural thing, I'm just mentioning a few unique cultural aspects. A second cultural thing could be a male heir. And I normally personally attest to this because I come from a family of three girls. And when my father passed away, we had issues around, oh, there's no male heir in the family. And so if my mother would have been driven differently, then she would have stolen a boy to maintain her marriage.
Right.
And the other thing is, we also don't talk about how to address infertility. Some of the interventions towards infertility could help these women so that they are not able to get to the point where they're getting to. We have cultural practices that also have children removed or go missing in certain issues. Some communities maybe still a little bit frown on education. Some communities engage in marrying off children. Some communities engage in female genital mutilation. And so some of these communities may also have some secretiveness and wanting to maintain those deep, unfortunate aspects of their culture. And some children will go missing and will be undocumented. And then the other thing, just poverty. Poverty is also a leading factor because you'll find a child may not be born in a hospital. She may be born at home or with a traditional birth attendant. This child will never go on record. And this child, when they go missing, they will never be documented anywhere. I'm glad that as Africa, we have started talking about our differently abled children. And they were for so long a taboo kept hidden in secret. And these are the children that if they were missing or there are vulnerabilities towards going missing, they are very high. And if they do go missing, it's a very big challenge in terms of the search and trace operations for them. So in a nutshell, I would just say that is a small overall picture of what I would say is a Kenyan and also closely related to African situation. And maybe now Damon might also chime in on that. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
can.
I can see my screen is warning me that my internet is not very good. I hope I'll not become a missing person of the conversation. Yeah. So I think Mariana's so the thing is, Caroline, the stories between Uganda, Kenya are not any different. We keep on saying that we were separated by borders, imaginary lines, but if you actually check, we are one country, and we have the same challenges, the same issues. And I don't want to repeat so much of what Mariana said, but the statistics for us is not known. Even the ways of recording, like Mariana said, the police recording, you end up finding that for quite some time, the recordings are not very clear at police stations. And then also the desire for, if the child has run away, then the child has bad manners. That's why the child ran away. So why are we going to spend time to look for the child? But the child is missing and the child has to be with the family. So exactly how are we responding is another question altogether. So we are into the conversation, and that's part of the work that I do in letting people know that whatever the case might be, a child is a child. That's the first thing. A child is a child. We can't force a child to become an adult when they're still a child. We need to be there, and our role as adults, as responsible citizens, is to make sure that we have and create an enabling environment that our children can thrive and be children and feel safe. Maryana will tell you, Caroline, that there was a time when we didn't have fences. There was a time when it was time to play, we would run out and play with everyone and anyone. We were not limited, we were not scared. You'd disappear at 7 a.m. in the morning and return at 7 p.m. And you leave the house when you're very clean, but you return when you have you look like you've come from constructing a house somewhere. You're all and that was part of our collaboration. That was part of the oneness where we used to work together, where we used to ensure that you would play games together. You knew everyone, and some of those people are still our friends today. And I can attest to them. They're still our long life good friends that we've had. But now the situation has changed. We no longer trust our neighbor. We no longer trust the person next door. Will our child not disappear? And these cases have continuously been reported. Some are cases that are quite gruesome, that unfortunately end up in death. For me, that is the biggest scare for me with the children that we're working with, that you end up finding that them being vulnerable are most affected to get into this area, into this situation, death and all that. I also quickly want to note, Caroline, and Marianne can also attest to it, that, when she talked about the cultural aspect around it, the fact that some of the cultural practices that we're doing force these children to even run away from home.
Yeah.
Let's talk about forced marriage. I'm not going to call it child marriage because that is quantifying it and qualifying it.
Yeah.
The forced marriage, where we get little children and force them into marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some of the religions
Do
are
that
pushing
across
for
the-
that.
Yeah, and we do this across the world. I mean, this is something that isn't unique to Africa, unfortunately. It is something that still
Yeah.
happens. And I think I
Yes.
agree with you. The one thing that we always talk about, especially when we focus on runaways specifically, is that there's either a reason for them running away because something's happening in the house, or something's happening outside of the house that makes them go run away even further. So I think there's
Yes.
there's two ways. There's always a reason, and it's not the child's fault, as you say, because it's a child.
Not all the time.
Child is a child,
No.
and even when they're 18, it's still not just because they're 18 doesn't mean that they're suddenly an adult from one day to the next.
No.
That's why we also need the structure for the missing adults and missing persons, because when you're 19, 20, 21, you're still exploring, you're going to university, your first time away from the house, maybe, or other ways that is suddenly new, and you're experiencing things that you never did before that then can lead into something that you weren't aware of, that you didn't realize there was a risk.
Yes.
But I appreciate you both with that, and I think that there's a lot that we can go into. I think one thing I do want to focus on a little bit is what you were saying, Mariana, is about the poverty, because I do think that at least in the developed world, we sort of forget that part, right? Because we've got things, we're always surrounded by the big cities and have all the resources are there, even though we complain there aren't. I wonder how you manage, with both of you manage to, with the limited resources that there are, how are you looking at this and managing to educate and build awareness around this issue within your community? Mariana, I know you mentioned also the social media. I think that plays a huge role, but I think you're using it very differently than what we do, at least in the States. So I also would love to hear more about how you're using social media in this case. And Damon, you have maybe using different methods to get to the community and building awareness and education around this.
Okay, so I'll start with an interesting intersection that maybe points out to poverty and human trafficking between Kenya and Uganda, and where my work and Damon's work crosses. It is common practice for people or families, women, ladies from backgrounds that are not economically stable enough to seek alternative work, and they seek alternative work as house helps, nannies, caregivers. And there's an interesting phenomenon that in Kenya, we prefer, we like having house helps from Uganda. We like getting ladies from Uganda to take care of our children. The ladies are crossing over because of poverty issues. Most of them, there are no payment contracts. There's no way we are they're not even paid like the standard minimum wage. And there's no proper background check between even the employer and the employee. And the employers mostly, they would take them, some would take them from an exploiting angle because they're saying they're cheaper and they work hard. So that is already exploitation. When they come to Kenya, they're taking care of our families and taking care of our children. Most of the cases that I've had between Kenya and Uganda of a missing child have been that a nanny who was Ugandan, who posed as Kenyan, came to work in Kenya and stole the child and went back because of the extra issues surrounding them. So that is one thing that brings out just the intersection of what poverty can lead to. Within our countries also, we also have a poverty divide. We are divided into rural and urban. So a case in Nairobi, which is our capital city, has more eyes, more attention because the people there are more exposed. They may come from a certain particular class, and even the ones that come from a lesser economic strata, like maybe they are laborers working in the slums, their case will still have more visibility as opposed to a case that is deep in the village where there is little information. Again, I attribute poverty to also lack of information. Some of the people living in our poorest conditions also don't have access to information that will assist them. And so you'll find the cases that are in the village may take time to come to our attention, and the ones in the urban areas would come to our attention quicker. So we are trying to strike that balance to see what are some of the different ways we can be able to reach out to the different communities. And so being online works for a certain community or a certain focus group. But when we get down to the different areas, we are exploring what are some of the ways that we can be able to do so. For instance, what we started doing, we had started a project. I think if you remember it, the billboards, the notice boards, putting up notice boards in public places with posters of missing children, which will strike conversation and people will know where to report. The other thing is, now that Missing Child Kenya moved its operations to Bungoma County, which is the area where I come from and I'm raised in, and that is a village setting, we have tried to explore penetrating into the local networks. There's weekly meetings with the chief, the elders, the community functions. How can we penetrate into this and give talks? How can we have information pamphlets that are given out to certain communities? And we take, unfortunately, because of our limited resources, we take advantage of an existing case. If a case comes in from a community, we use that case because we have created networks around that case, and we use it to penetrate to give more information. So it's a mix of a lot of things, but one of the things that we try to do is the aftercare, the follow-up. If the case has been resolved, maybe the child has been found or the child is still missing, what is the family circumstance? Missing Child Kenya does not have the resources to support totally a family, but we will look at what are the existing structures within your community and how can we guide you to them? How can we guide you to where you can look at medical services? How can we guide you to where you can look at ensuring that the child remains in school? Because some of the children, again, that are wandering off and maybe are susceptible is because they're participating in child labor. Damon will tell you within school holidays or even school days, if you come to Kenya, when you are in traffic, you would see a lot of children on the traffic highway selling groundnuts, selling things. Those are children that are not supposed to be selling those things. And when they're there, they are vulnerable to a lot of things, but they're doing it because of poverty, to support the family and to keep something warm in their stomach. So it's a mix of things, but the approach also, we are trying a multi-faceted approach to see, number one, how do we get information on the right resources to the people? If there are other partners that are financially well enough to support, how do we direct them to them? But then it's still a standing factor. It's what leads to a lot of the vices that the children encounter and go missing.
Yeah. And Damon, from your side, I wonder how I know reaching the community is important and that's what you stand with. But how do you reach the community? How do you change not necessarily the culture, but the norms of, okay, forced marriage is wrong, female mutilation is wrong, trafficking is wrong, going missing is wrong, or is a risk to all of these things? How do you start explaining this in the community so that it's part of the culture instead of against the culture?
Again, Maryana picked the words right out of my mouth, but just to give it from the other angle, it's more or less the same as to what Maryana said. let me just approach it from this angle of where we are now moving to the part of empowering the children to be able to be agents of protection. So we are moving away from the space where we speak for the children, and now we are trying to engage them and build their capacity for them to be able to speak and be also good agents of reporting in case anything is happening. So what we have done a lot is they have the children engage, train them on how to engage, train them on how to be respectful when they're engaging with adults, because for us, children are supposed to be really respectful. If you're disobedient to your parents, you can be thrown out of the community. So how they can reasonably engage within their culture, how they can use music, dance, or drama to bring out the stories and to share the issues. And for those who are survivors, those who have come back, how we are able to capture their stories, still with the consideration that we're protecting their identity and ensuring that they are not left in a vulnerable state.
Mhm.
We are able to still see how they can tell their story, and from their story it begins to be it starts the conversation for us to have. And Maryana has spoken about the particular area that is most affected. That's the Karamoja region, and from that region we have the biggest number of children who run away from home, the biggest number of children who migrate, and in the process of migrating are taken advantage of and end up being trafficked into other spaces. And these children, we have had close to over in a year. We are told from our counterparts in Nairobi that 25 children arrive every day in Nairobi. Where they're from, how they get there, that's another story. These children are not with an adult. They have been, of course, there's a clear syndicate of having that. But what has driven them to go there? It's exactly what Marianne said. The poverty levels are highest. And that region we're talking about in Uganda has the highest poverty levels. Recently, Caroline, I was also in Burundi. Well, about 2 years back, I was in Burundi.
Yeah.
And the situation is worse. When Marianne says that children are out of school, they become targets to be taken advantage of. If the children are doing nothing, there's that saying that we have: an idle mind is the devil's workshop. It is you have nothing to do, so you're easily enticed, and you cross. You get across and you have different issues. There's a big lake at Burundi, which is Lake Tanganyika, and the children are pushed to go into fishing as an option rather than being in school. And some of these children don't come back to the shores. I've been told stories that some of the children, when the storm becomes bad, the first people to lighten the boat, you throw the children off. These children never reunited again with their families, and all this is all around the poverty, the fact that the child is not in school, the fact that the child has no opportunity to go to have the education. But creating the awareness and letting people know and changing their perceptions of how they view children. My work with the children on the streets, at the very beginning, I thought these children were also vagabonds. They were useless. They are just deserters of their family and all that. But when I went and I personally started engaging with these children and asking the children, why have you come to the street? Do you know what many of the children would tell me? Many of them are saying that I don't know. It is either one, I did not eat supper. I've not been eating supper. I've not been eating food. I am here now to look for food for myself. Or two, they're saying that I have not gone to school. I want to go to school. So I've come here to beg so that I can get school fees and go back to school. Many of them, the best way to get them off the street is offer them a meal and take them back to school, and they will stay in school. That gives you a clear picture. And when we talk about poverty, let's not only talk about the poverty of the money. Let's also speak about the poverty of the mind, how people think, how people are perceiving things, and how people are looking at their children as a source of income, pushing them to you having as many children and you're not able to take care. We even have cultural situations where people are still giving birth for the sake of having many children. and they can be counted as rich. All these levels of poverty, thinking, and also in terms of funds ends up preventing us. But the best tool we have had so far, the success that we have had, is when we empower the children, they are able to tell their story, they're able to come out. There is nothing as powerful as hearing the story that the children have to say.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Children have a story and they should be heard. I wonder though, Damon, also because both of you have talked a lot about the different culture or the cultural aspects of it. And as you're both NGOs and charities, I wonder how much you're working with law enforcement, just because, again, looking at the US, looking at Europe, when it comes to missing children, it automatically is that the NGO works with law enforcement, and law enforcement is the one that does the investigation and the actual search for the child. But similar to you, they have little resources. So how does it work with you when it actually comes to a case, when you get a call, when you're how do you work with law enforcement, if at all? And how does that actually help in the search for the child?
Okay.
Well, just like
Damon will
Maria,
go first.
okay. Just like Marianne said earlier on, well, Marianne, they have now the toll free. About 20 years back, Uganda Child Rights NGO Network started the child helpline in Uganda. It's now shorter, it's called Sauti 116. You just dial 116 and you report your child is missing, and then the police is able to pick it up. So us beginning that as a civil society and then later on handing it over, and for the last 10 years, government has been running the child helpline. And the difference is that the child helpline has counselors, it has case managers, case workers, and it also has the police as a part of the child helpline. So when the cases are reported, the police immediately are able to pick it up, and then they're able to send it out through their networks. The networks are not very bad. Our police networks are actually very good. They go right up to the grassroots. So the message is able to go out. We are not yet at the level that Marianne has now come to. Congratulations, Marianne, on launching the Amber Alert. That is one where we hope that we would also get to. We're not yet at that level, but we have the child helpline that has the police at that spot. It has the case workers, and these trickle down to the district levels, and it's supposed to help in the coordination. Now, when it comes to the ability to do the investigations and everything, I must tell you, because there is no money here, it is not an interest for police to engage in. They're more interested in the corruption cases. They're more interested in those cases where they will be able to get a lot of money. But we are lucky that Uganda has what we call, in the police force, we have what we call the child and family welfare officers. And we're able to engage with these particular officers who have a passion for children. And these officers are able to hold their other officers accountable, engage them effectively, and are able to do investigations. The financing for the investigations is terrible. Majority of the times we have to invest in it as civil society. That is the biggest angle. And this is not the best time, because as we speak right now, much of the funding, not only from the US, from even other areas, has tremendously been cut. And that has been one of the biggest challenges that has been in place. So for us in Uganda, I'll say that we do not necessarily lack the systems. The systems are in place. The two things that are not happening is, one, the financing for it to be effective and efficient, and two, the capacity building of those officers who are still looking at it as a money venture, an opportunity to make money, rather than looking at it as a social issue. But the key thing that we have had also rally around us is when we get champions. Getting champions in leadership has always been a positive on our side. And what we have tried to do is engage and have a champion in the police force. We have also engaged and had champions in the army, because you see in Uganda we also have the issue of child soldiers We've had the history of child soldiers, and also we are bordering Congo, where child soldiers are being identified and abandoned in Uganda. And likewise, also Ugandan children are being taken into Congo to fight the wars and battles there, and also from South Sudan. So we also have champions in the army, and we have champions in the police, and we are also trying to get champions even in the ministry heads, the cabinet ministers, so that they can be the voices are everywhere.
That's amazing. It's great that you have a specific child and family welfare unit within the police, because actually a lot of the police forces in the developed world do not have a dedicated unit. That is still something that is missing within the police force. So similar to you, we're still educating the police force to say you need to look at missing. Missing, it may not bring you the money or the fame, but it is important to think about the child and what that means for the society, right? And the impact it has. And I know, Maryana, we've talked a little bit about the different things, and the hour is going really quickly, and I feel like we've only just started going into some of these conversations. So we've got the last few minutes, or the last sort of 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But I do wonder also of maybe one thing that we've talked about is dispelling some of the myths around missing, right? That it is important that we report. It's important that the child is looked after, that the child is reunited with the family. What is something that you see in Kenya that really is something that you would want to change immediately, that is just something that you're working on and that just isn't getting across to the people? What is it that you would want to have people really know about the issue of missing?
I think this ties it to also your previous question of cooperation, because we'd like to see how we can have a network of relevant organizations, services, and especially the government. We work with the police and we work with the Department of Children's Services in terms of ensuring our cases are well handled. And with the government, we have also listed to come up with a framework of what to do. Now, for me, one myth that we need to dispel is we should take 48 hours before reporting a missing child. It is a difficult, tricky one because it involves culture, it involves community awareness, it also involves policy and legislation, it involves the working of certain organizations like maybe the police and Department of Children's Services and other organizations linked to services for children, and even our national toll-free line 116 that also Missing Child Kenya taps in. What we are trying to do over the years with these partners that we have worked so well with is to inform the community. The minute a child goes missing, report it immediately. Do not wait for 48 hours. If you go to a police station and, for instance, a police officer tells you that come back after 48 hours, it could be that the police officer is also probably not well versed in the urgency of a missing child cases versus a missing adult. Please go back again and insist that this is a child and their vulnerability increases with the time that they are missing. Because what we do not want to do is to continue playing catch up, getting cases that are 2 days old when we have lost a lot of forensic evidence. So my clarion call to all the partners, especially the government ones that receive this information and we pass it across, has been that let us dispel this myth of waiting for 48 hours, 24 hours, whichever waiting period that we assume we should wait before the child comes back, because the world is currently different. So if all of us are looking at the same playbook, especially the people who are stewards of child welfare, which is organizations like ourselves, the police, the Department of Children's Services, our national helpline 116, among other services, then we should be able to speak with one language and support these people and also educate them together and tell them, report to us immediately. The earlier we receive these cases, the better it is for us to help you. It doesn't matter the situation. Just tell us, and immediately we will receive the information and start processing it. I think for me, even before we get to working on the cultural issues that have taken time and will continue to take time, immediate reporting is what will get us to act on the cases faster and dispel the myth that we have to wait.
I can only agree with this wholeheartedly. We've been working on that for years and years and decades to be able to dispel this myth. And it's slow, but it is getting there. And I think
Yeah.
talking to the community is the important part because they can make a difference in this as well. Damon, I wonder if you have anything in regards to a myth or that you would want to dispel in regards to children and missing, and also maybe just the work that you're doing on child rights and trafficking and street children. Because we always look at we sort of dismiss street children very easily as, oh, we don't want to see it, we don't want to hear it, we don't want to talk about it. So what would you want everybody to know in relation to the missing and the street children, of what we need to look at and what we need to do?
Okay, so I think I've been saying it right from the beginning, and that is that, and earlier on, I think Caroline, you also hinted to it, that each of the numbers that we're talking about of the children missing, behind those figures, behind those numbers, are actually real human beings. Um, and each and every one of those human beings has a story.
Yep.
Every face that we see has a story. Do we take the opportunity to sit down and listen to the story? Or are we busy-minded and engaging and all that? And you see, one of the biggest challenges we have with the society we are leading and heading to, and it's becoming worse and worse, is that we're becoming a very, very, very busy society, and at the cost of our community, at the cost of even not realizing. Now, Maryana said that people reporting is after 48 hours. But some people don't even realize their children are missing. Some people don't realize that the adults are missing until it is a week or 2 weeks and it's too late.
Yep.
What is the story?
Yep.
What stories can we tell?
And I think
What is the story of that child? What is the story?
if we as human beings have a story and it needs to be heard, of a child as well as an adult, and we need to take the time to listen to each other. So I really appreciate that, and that's a really great way to unfortunately to close this conversation and this episode. I would love to talk more. Maybe we need to have a second episode to go a little more
I
deep
agree.
into these issues. But I appreciate you both. And let me just close out by saying that for all the listeners, if you'd like to find out more about our work and what the work that Maryana and Damon are doing and any resources we've mentioned, please go to our website, missingpersonsuncovered.com. And if you have questions and you would like to have them answered, please email us. We're always available. Please contact us through the website. If you like specific information or need help, please reach out to your local police department or national charity. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to be part of this, please tell people, please share it. Please don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel. And for listeners who are on the podcast platform, please leave a comment or just tell us that you liked it. That way we get more listeners to join us. Again, thank you, Maryana. Thank you, Damon. I'm Caroline Humer. Thank you for your listening and joining us next time in 2 weeks on June. So are we already? Yeah, June 26th. We will be discussing the link between missing and human trafficking, and I have some interesting data analysis coming to and discussion on that. So I really appreciate it. Thank you both. And we'll see you all